Hi, my name is Angela Ruiz. Do you often feel bad about yourself because you don't have everything figured out? Does it seem like the people around you have it more together than you do? Well, in this particular video today, I'm going to talk about the reason why it's okay to not have everything figured out. I have a couple notes here to keep myself on track because I do go off track with a lot of anecdotes. I don't do it too often, but it does happen. Um, so, first of all, you have to realize that nobody has it all figured out. If someone tells you they do have it all figured out, they're either lying to you or they're in denial of the co creative process and believe they live in a vacuum. That's just it. Generally, when we see people out there on social media or just in life, we're seeing kind of a finished product in some capacity. And so when it seems like people have it together, particularly on social media, you're looking at the finished product. You're not necessarily looking at the struggle. The same thing when you look at pro athletes and people like that. Um, I mean, in a way, they do have that single minded focus of, I am going to be the best athlete. And that part might be figured out, but there's other stuff that they may not necessarily have figured out either. And a thing I've even noticed with social media, in some people trying to be vulnerable, it still looks like a finished product, particularly on Instagram. Like, you can't put a picture of yourself with like a messy bun and then apply a filter. I mean, you could, that's your business, but to me, it doesn't seem like true vulnerability. I'm not saying that I don't do that because I haven't gone on video in a while, because I haven't quite had everything together. So, to be fair to those people, um, I do the same thing. Another thing is, if I don't stream my videos live, I record them 80 million times until it's perfect, until that one strand of hair is in place. So again, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, like, don't fool yourself into the fact that these people have it all figured out. They don't, you know? And the unfortunate thing about the things that are going on right now is we have more time to compare ourselves to people. Particularly, Brenda, that chick you went to high school with, who's baked her like 10th loaf of sourdough bread while you've been sitting on your butt scrolling through Facebook on Netflix. Like, don't compare yourself to that. Aside from that picture of the sourdough bread, I'm sure Brenda finished like the first season of Umbrella Academy in like one day. Just saying. Um, but being vulnerable is kind of hard. So, it's time. It really is time to stop comparing ourselves to other people, because it's, again, we're just taking a brief moment into their lives, and the same for people when it comes to us. And so it might seem like they have everything figured out, but they don't. And don't let the outside world try to convince you otherwise. When we attempt to portray the image or even tell ourselves that we all have it figured out, it creates a level of rigidity and extremes. So, for example, if you figured out every single thing that you're going to put in your mouth for like the next 30 days, if you're extreme with it, you're going to be afraid to leave your house because you no longer have control of what you just figured out with your plan. And another thing is, if you've decided to, say, go to college, work in your field, and start a family, and you have all of that figured out, well, first and foremost, once you finish college, you have to find that job. Or even if you don't go to college and you decide you want to work in a trade, like working in a factory, you still have to find that job. And then, unlike back in the day, or even back in the day, like, people have gone through that mindset of, learn a trade or get a degree, work in that job, retire, live off your pension until you die. And the unfortunate aspect of it, especially to me with factory workers, I've never worked in a factory, but it just seems like when you go into it with that mindset and like the factory closes or it like moves overseas or something, it puts a monkey wrench in that thing of life that you have all figured out. And so that level of rigidity can cause problems. And this is true of any job. I just use factory workers because historically, like in television, film, and even in reality of people who do that, this seems to be a common theme of what happens. And when you're this rigid, it can, when life throws like a lemon at you or pulls the rug out from under you, it's like an extreme thing. And so it reminds me actually of the parable of the guy who built his house on the sand versus the guy who built his house on the rock, right? So the guy who built his house on the sand, I'm going to focus on that guy, was sure that building his house on the sand, like he didn't have to worry about wind, rain, or what have you in building his house. And so he's like, I'm going to put it on the sand because it's easier. And well, if you know the parable, you know what happened to that guy's house. This is also true in the book Who Moved My Cheese, where the people who were certain that the cheese was always going to come from that particular place, they kind of stayed there, and they got really mad when there was no more cheese, but they were determined that the cheese was going to come back. And so they didn't move, and they were stuck in their ways because they had it figured out that the cheese will always come from here. Whereas like the other people who like put on their shoes to keep looking for the cheese, like they didn't have it figured out where the cheese was going to come from next. They just knew that they had to keep going in order to be able to eat the cheese. This may not be the best summary of the book, and so I highly recommend that you check that out for yourself. It's a fairly short read, and so, but it has a lot of depth and a lot of value. Basically, if you believe you have it all figured out, like outlined in every detail from this point until you die, like you have the potential to have your life implode upon itself. Another reason that it's okay to not have it figured out is it gives you the opportunity for growth. So you have the space to figure out that it's okay to not have everything figured out, and also that you're not lacking something. Because when we get into this whole, like, you lack something, you get into that scarcity mindset of, oh my God, Brenda lost like 50 pounds again, and she looks amazing. Gosh, I suck. Like, I wish I had it figured out like Brenda. That's kind of scarcity because, again, Brenda's not fallible. You're not fallible. I'm not fallible. So we all kind of have to give ourselves and give other people grace, because you don't know how Brenda had to pivot to lose that 50 pounds. And the same thing with being flexible and abundance mindset is that if you don't have everything figured out, when you're blindsided by something else, it's like, okay, well, now I can pivot off of this and go on, because you have the flexibility to move, because you know it's okay that this random thing came, because you're okay that you didn't have it figured out, right? Now, I don't know why I choose Brenda when I tell a story, the name Brenda. I just do. It may be like ingrained from something I used to watch in TV or something, but I don't know. Brenda's not a bad name. But to summarize this whole video, it's okay to not have everything figured out, because it allows you to be flexible, to have room for growth, to come from a place of an abundance mindset, and to be able to participate in the co-creative process of life, because we don't live our lives in a vacuum. We actually live our lives with other people who also have free will. And so it allows us to effectively live in that co-creative process. And if you got value from this video, definitely share it, and I will see you in the next video.